I'll tell you this the way it really happened. The way the evening light colored every plate on the table. And how one simple sentence split my life into before and after. We were halfway through dinner when my husband's brother, Minh, set his fork down and made an offer I never saw coming. It wasn't money or advice or a favor you can repay with a thank you card. It was bigger than all of that. The kind of offer that makes your heartbeat land heavy in your ears and your hands go still around a cloth napkin. I know it sounds unbelievable, but if you stay with me, you'll understand how a quiet family dinner turned into the night everything changed. Before I get into it, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Which city? Which small town? I love picturing you there. Maybe in your kitchen with a mug of something warm. Maybe in a recliner with your feet up. Maybe letting this play while you wash dishes after your own long day. It helps me talk to you like a friend I've known all my life. The restaurant wasn't fancy, just the kind of place where the lights are soft and the booths are vinyl and the servers call you Han whether you're 20 or 70. The floors had that clean lemony smell, and the air hummed with the low harmony of silverware and quiet conversations. It was a Thursday, I remember, because Thursdays are when I finally feel the week's weight all the way down to my ankles. I'm Lon. I'm 49 and I've learned to notice small things. How the butter curls sit in their little paper cups. How the ice in your water glass looks frosted at the edges. How you can measure a man by the patience in his eyes when he listens. Minh slid into the booth across from me and my husband late by a few minutes that felt like more. He'd called ahead and told us, "I'm parking. Go ahead and order me the meatloaf." Which is the sort of sentence you only say to family. He's the younger brother by 6 years, the uncle who always brings puzzles to holidays and somehow talks the kids into finishing them. The kind of man who returns your tools cleaner than he found them. I've known him since I was 21, back when I still sang along to every song on the radio. He hugged me quickly when he arrived, an ordinary hug, and then he took off his cap and ran a hand through his hair the way he does when he's thinking hard about something. We talked first about nothing. Traffic on the interstate, the weird warm spell in October, how the neighborhood lost power for 2 hours the night before, and all the houses on our street were lit by candles like it was Christmas Eve. My husband joked that we should move somewhere less dramatic and Minh laughed, but there was a hitch in it. He kept glancing down at the menu like he needed to steady himself with the familiar, even though he'd asked for meatloaf before he'd ever stepped inside. I was tired, and I don't sing that to get sympathy. It's a particular kind of tired that sits behind your knees and under your ribs. The kind you don't notice until you stand up too fast and the room does a slow wobble. I've been managing stage 3 kidney disease for a while now. The quiet kind that creeps around the edges of your life with lab numbers and diet charts and doctors who speak very carefully. We hadn't discussed it much outside family, not because I'm ashamed, but because it's exhausting to be a walking update. If you've ever faced a medical thing that stole your vocabulary and replaced it with words like function and stages and options, you know what I mean? I told my husband I didn't want pity. I wanted Tuesdays with errands and Thursdays with meatloaf. The server brought salads first. Iceberg Crisp has a new bill with little red tomatoes that burst when you pressed your fork into them. Minh asked for extra dressing in that polite way of his, and while the server walked away, he looked at me straight on. Not staring, not pitying, just steady. "How are you really, Lon?" he asked. He's always called me Lon, like the name fits better in his mouth without that last vowel. "I'm all right," I said. And even as I said it, I knew it was the kind of answer you give people so they won't lean in closer. My husband slid his hand under the table and found mine, a habit we have. Married a long time, you learn a kind of Morse code of squeezes. "I'm here. I hear you. I know." I squeezed back and smiled at Minh, and I must have done a good job because he nodded like I told a joke, and he was giving me the laugh for free. We ate. The meatloaf arrived with mashed potatoes, fluffy as clouds, and a ribbon of gravy. I could have written my name in. The waitress checked on us and told us about her daughter's spelling bee. In the morning I listened. I'm the kind of woman who collects strangers' stories like smooth stones in a pocket. They weigh nothing and somehow make you feel less alone. Minh waited until our plates were half empty, until we'd all found our rhythm. The sip of water, the dab of napping, the familiar motion of dinner that makes you think you'll be doing this forever. He cleared his throat, and the sound of it made the little hairs on my arms stand up. It was a sound like someone stepping onto a bridge and testing the first plank. "I talked to a doctor," he said, and the way he said doctor made my knife pause above the meatloaf. Not my doctor. Not his doctor. A doctor. He caught my husband's eyes first, then mine. About donating, he said. A kidney. I didn't speak. I don't think I could have. Not right then. The room did a gentle shiver and then steadied again, like the floor remembered itself. Somewhere in the back of the restaurant a plate clinked. People were just living their regular Thursdays, and inside that we were having one of those moments you were supposed to read about in other people's lives. For you, he added, if I'm a match for Lon, he didn't reach for my hand. He didn't make it dramatic. He stated it like a promise already half kept. My husband breathed out a sound I've only heard twice before. Once when our boy was born with a knot in his cord, and they whisked him away and brought him back pink and squalling. And once when we learned my mother's biopsy wasn't the kind of news that ruins a Christmas. Relief and fear braided together like ropes soaked in rain. Minh, my husband said, just his name. But sometimes a name can mean a whole paragraph. Are you sure? Why would you do that? Do you know what that is? You don't have to. You're not obligated. You're my brother. I love you. You don't have to save us. I know what I'm saying, Minh said. I've been reading. I started months ago after Lon told us about the numbers. I didn't want to say anything until I understood. I called the transplant center. Donors can live long lives with one. You know that they told me the risks, the recovery. I'm not playing hero. I can do this. And if I can, why wouldn't I? I swallowed, but my throat was sand. If you've ever had someone offer you a lifeline you didn't want to admit you needed, you know the feeling. A stubborn, grateful ache. I looked at him properly then. Not at his hands, the way he keeps his nails clean and trimmed even though he works in a garage all day. Not at his hair, always a little wind-tossed like he just stepped out of a field. I looked to his face at the years we've shared, funerals and graduations, and the year the pipes burst on Christmas, and we all ate Chinese takeout at his place by the heat of a space heater. You can't do this because you feel sorry for me, I said finally. It came out smaller than I meant it to. He shook his head. I'm doing it because I can. He tapped his chest lightly. Because I get one body and you get one body, and sometimes the math of family means we share. That's not pity, that's purpose. The server reappeared for a second with a pot of coffee, and I must have nodded because she poured it, and the steam rose between us like a little veil. I wrapped my hands around the mug to ground myself. The ceramic was warm, real solid. Minh. I tried again, finding my voice this time. This isn't just a car part you can swap and forget about. This is surgery. This is I don't even know what to say. Then don't say anything yet, he said softly. Just let me get tested. If I'm not a match, this conversation disappears and we go back to meatloaf and weather talk, and you never have to feel strange about it. And if I am, then we decide together. You, me, and him. He nodded at my husband. No pressure, no guilt, just options. There it was. The word I hadn't let myself hold too carefully. Options. When you're sick, even in the early stages, the world starts to feel like a hallway with fewer and fewer doors. Minh's words were like someone finding a hidden latch and swinging a panel open to light. I looked at my husband. He was blinking hard, not because he's the kind of man who cries in restaurants, but because he's the kind of man whose eyes tell the truth, even when his mouth is still catching up. He squeezed my fingers under the table so tight I almost winced, and I squeezed back a yes to his yes and his fear and his gratitude. We didn't speak for a beat. The restaurant's low music threaded around us, something with a guitar and a steady rhythm, the kind of song that might play in a truck on a long late drive home. A couple in the next booth laughed and clinked their glasses. The world didn't pause for our moment, but somehow it held it. "Okay," I said at last. "Okay, we can talk to them. You can get tested. We'll learn everything. We'll do it the right way. I don't want you to be hurt, Minh." I felt clumsy, like I was walking on stones across a creek. One step at a time. Don't slip. He gave the smallest smile, the kind a man wears when he just got permission to do something decent. And he's relieved you didn't stop him. "I'm not trying to be noble," he said. "I love you both. That's all. Here is a thing I didn't expect. Relief feels a lot like standing up after you've been crouching too long. Your knees burn, your back complains. Then the blood finds its path again. And you remember how tall you are." I sat there with my too warm coffee and my half-eaten dinner, and the knowledge that maybe, just maybe, the future wasn't a hallway narrowing to a point. We talked practicalities. Minh had already arranged to meet a donor coordinator. He'd done the boring work, phone calls, paperwork, time-off projections at the garage. He'd even asked his boss about the leave. And the man had said something Min repeated with a little laugh. You can fix transmissions any day, but you don't get to fix family every day. Take the time you need. I wanted to protest, to insist we pay for whatever wasn't covered, to tidy the whole thing into a ledger that balanced. But this isn't a bill you can split down the middle. It's something else entirely, something that refuses math and insists on meaning. We agreed we'd let the doctors lead and the facts guide us. We'd tell the kids, but not right away. Not until we had concrete information and could explain it without trembling. We'd sleep on it. We pray on it quietly the way we do, not making a spectacle of our hope. When the plates were cleared, Min asked for a slice of lemon pie for the table, which made me laugh because by then laughter felt like proof that the world still worked. The pie was tart and sweet and reminded me of summertime and screen doors. He slid the first forkful toward me. A little ritual he started years ago when we all shared desserts because times were tight and 3 forks on one plate felt like community. I took a bite and closed my eyes. Tasted like yellow sunshine. Driving home later, I watched the streetlights strobe across the windshield and thought about the day Min was born. At least the way I picture it, since I didn't know them then. My mother-in-law used to tell the story, how he came fast and small and furious with life, and how his brother had pressed his chubby toddler fingers to the baby's palm and said, "Mine." Brothers are like that. The first contract you sign with your heart before any lawyer teaches you otherwise. I thought about how life made a loop. How the baby you cradle grows into the man who offers you a part of his own body, because love is a circle that keeps finding its way back to the starting point. At a red light, my husband reached over and turned down the radio because he knows me and he could tell I was lost somewhere important in my head. "What are you thinking?" he asked. That I didn't know how heavy the air was until it shifted. I said that I'm scared. That I'm grateful. That I wish I could promise I'll accept if he's a match. That I wish I could promise I won't. "You don't have to promise anything tonight," he said. "We don't owe the world certainty by dessert." I laughed softly at that, and the light turned green, and the car moved forward like it knew the way without us. When we got home, I went straight to the sink and washed my hands slowly, the way you do after a funeral or a birth, like the water can make sense of the day for you. The house was quiet. I could hear the refrigerator hum and the neighbor's dog bark twice, and then decide whatever he'd heard wasn't worth a third try. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the little notebook where I write things that matter, not appointments, not grocery lists, just the bigger stuff. I wrote, "Min offered." I underlined it twice, then added, "Not a promise. A door." I know some of you watching understand that. Maybe you've stood in a hospital hallway counting floor tiles, waiting for a doctor to step out with news that moved the furniture inside your life around. Maybe you've been the one who signed a line on a consent form and felt your hand shake a little, not from fear, but from the weight of choosing. Maybe you've been Min, the one who decides to carry part of someone else's load because your back is strong and theirs needs a rest. I slept lightly that night, dreaming not of operating rooms or machines or sterile lights, but of water. In the dream I was on a lake in a small boat. The sky was early, gray with promise, and I had one and the current was kind. I could steer. That was all I wanted, really, to feel like I could steer. Morning brought ordinary things. Coffee, mail, a neighbor waving from across the street. I put a load of laundry in the washer and listened to the machine churn like a small engine, steady and dependable. I flipped open my notebook again and added another line. We decide together. That was important to me. Mutual respect. No pressure. No drama. Just adults who love each other making a plan and leaving room for the unexpected parts. Later, Min texted me. Not a long message, not an essay, just a photo. It was a sunrise he'd taken from the shop's back lot. The sky struck like someone had taken a brush and dragged it across the horizon. Underneath he wrote, "New day." I stared at it for longer than a photo deserves. Then I typed back, "New day." If you're still with me, you've probably realized this story isn't about miracles snapping their fingers and fixing everything in an instant. It's about the long, quiet courage it takes to let people love you in ways you can't repay. It's about the kind of offer that doesn't flatter your pride, but raises your life. It's about family being the kind of math that adds up only when you stop trying to tally the columns and start trusting the sum. We didn't decide that night. We didn't run forward braless. We stood still and allowed hope to catch up to us. Allowed knowledge to catch up to hope. But when Min said those words at dinner, a hinge inside my heart shifted. The door didn't swing wide yet, but it opened a crack, and behind it I saw a slice of bright. And that's where I'll pause for now, because the next part isn't about the offer. It's about what we asked, what we learned, and how the right questions can make a path appear where you thought there was only wall. We walked it step by step, together, careful as people carrying something fragile between them. The next days unfolded like a slow tide, steady, creeping into every corner of thought. Min's offer didn't vanish into the air like dinner table chatter usually does. Clung to me. Every morning when I poured my coffee, I felt it sitting there between us, invisible but heavy. My husband and I spoke in whispers not because we were hiding, but because speaking too loudly felt like tempting fate. At the kitchen table while the sun came up over the backyard fence, he'd ask, "Do you think he really knows what this means?" And I'd answer, "I don't know." But he sounded sure. Then we'd sit in silence, listening to the refrigerator hum. Two people measuring the size of gratitude and fear. The call from the transplant center came on a Tuesday afternoon. Min had already given them his information, and they asked me to come in for cross-hatching tests. The nurse on the line was cheerful, her voice clipped and professional, but she slipped in a phrase that rooted in my chest. "If he's serious," she said it kindly, but I held on to it. If he's serious. He was. That evening Min stopped by our house after work. He smelled faintly of motor oil, the kind of smell you don't wash off even with good soap. He stood in the doorway holding a six-pack of soda, sheepish as a teenager. "I figured you'd need something to drink while you think about this," he said. He came inside and sat at the table, his elbows resting lightly, like he knew not to push too hard into the moment. "I meant it," he said. "All of it. I'm not backing out." I studied him then. Not the familiar brother-in-law who fixed my screen door last summer, or the man who always carves the Thanksgiving turkey, but someone different. Someone carrying both courage and risk in his open hands. "Min," I said, "this is not just about giving something up. This is about you, your health, your life." He nodded. "And it's about yours too. Look, when we were kids, I always followed my brother into the deep end of the pool. I figured if he could swim it, I could too. That's what this feels like. If I can swim it, then why wouldn't I?" The tests began. Long hours at the hospital, blood drawn in vials that lined up like soldiers. I learned words I never wanted to know. Antigens, compatibility ratios, and clearance. Each step felt like standing on a ledge waiting to see if the bridge appeared. While we waited for results, life insisted on continuing. The laundry piled up. My husband needed to replace the alternator on the car. The neighbor's dog dug a hole under our fence. I went grocery shopping and stood in front of the apples, suddenly struck by how beautiful ordinary things looked when the extraordinary pressed close at your back. The red skin gleamed. The world was still offering sweetness. One afternoon Min called me from his truck. The engine hummed loud through the line. "Lon," he said, "I want you to promise me something." "What's that?" "Promise you won't carry this like a debt. If I'm a match and if you say yes, you're not going to owe me anything. Not favors, not endless thank yous. Just live your life." "That's enough." I gripped the foam so tight my knuckles whitened. "That's a big promise, Min." "It's the only one I need," he said simply. When the results came back, the doctor smiled the way doctors do when they've delivered bad news before and finally get to share good. "He's a strong match," she said. My husband squeezed my hand so hard I felt the bones shift. I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded, but my mind was already racing. Strong match, not just a chance, a real path. We sat in the hospital parking lot afterward, the air heavy with summer heat, windows rolled down. Min leaned against the hood of his truck, arms crossed, looking at me. "So," he said, "what do you want to do?" I stared at him for a long moment, the kind of look that tries to carve the moment into memory forever. Behind him, the sky stretched wide and careless as if it had no idea our lives were knotted up here. "I want to live," I said. "And I want you to live too. If you're sure." "I've never been sure of anything," he replied. That night, when the house was quiet and my husband was asleep beside me, I lay awake listening to his breathing. I thought about how love takes different shapes. Sometimes in vows spoken at an altar, sometimes in years of shared bills and arguments and vacations, and sometimes in an unexpected offer laid gently across a dinner table. I thought about Min's words, not a promise, a door. And I realized the hardest part wasn't accepting his gift. The hardest part was allowing myself to walk through that door knowing I could never close it again. The surgery wasn't tomorrow or even next month. There were more steps, more hurdles, more waiting. But that night, for the first time in a long while, I slept deeply. My dreams were quiet. The water was calm. And when morning came, I opened the curtains wide and let the light in because I knew the world had shifted irrevocably tenderly toward hope. And if you ask me now, years from that dinner, if I believe in miracles, I'll tell you the truth. Miracles don't always come in sudden flashes of light. Sometimes they come in the form of a brother-in-law sliding into a booth, setting down his fork, and making an offer that changes